when we were over at the
I pulled out when the Zimmerman house, you're going to hear a lot about the Zimmerman house today. The Zimmerman house was built somewhere around 1885 as a like just a kitchen area. And then the town wanted to put a road through exactly where that house was so that the people could get from Main Street to the local church, Catholic church. So they asked Peter Zimmerman I if he would move his little family house just a little bit more this way, and then they could put the road through. So the family house, which I will show you a picture of it, it's all it is just 4 boards and a roof. And they moved that over, and it developed into an absolutely gorgeous Queen Anne house. It's beautiful. The pictures of it when I lived there was absolutely beautiful. But in that house, after the family was all gone, it was up to me as the youngest person to do this, is to go into that house and start picking out things. What do we keep? What do we get rid of? What goes on sale? What should be given to each? And I had to follow the will of the ladies who lived there. So anything that you didn't know what it was or anybody had claim to, I ended up in my pot, my part. And I looked at that thing and I thought, God, that's cute. What is it? Don said, it's a pickle jar. I said, how do you know that? Because my grandmother has one in her house. And I looked at that and I thought, oh my God, that is so cute. So years later, it's been sitting in the cupboard, and I found it the other day, so I decided to polish it up and just put it on the counter and see people come in, notice things, okay? And what's that? It's a pickle jar. It's a pickle jar. Yep, that's what they use. And it's a beautiful pickle jar. I mean, it's if you take a look at it, it's the kind of a glass, depression glass. It's absolutely beautiful. It has the original thing that you use to pick out pickles. And I polished it up, and I will polish it up again. But many people come in, and the first thing they say is, what's that? Because nobody knows it. So
what year do you think?
That's got to go back to Peter Zimmerman I. So that would be, oh my God, I'm going to say 1920s at least. Mm. Yeah, it could be even earlier than that, I don't know. I just liked it and I kept it and found it again and polished it and put it up here. So this is the only piece of this that you will see in this house that was not made by Don. There's a place in Canandaigua. It's the pottery, and it's 5 little kind of octagonal shops, and he and his son do all of the pottery. It's hand done, but they use nature in it. So all of these are parts of flowers that are in it, and I saw it and I thought, oh, I just have to buy that, and I bought it. And it's the only piece of pottery in the house that hasn't been made by Don. Hmm. Yeah. So anytime you see one, it's Don. And it's not mine. I'm looking at a picture of Nicholas Christian Zimmerman, who is the original, originally from Germany, and was the first of the Zimmermans to come to Wayland. He was a teacher. He was an owner of a restaurant, as I understand it, in which I have in back of you one of the original pieces that was in his restaurant.
Which one is it?
This is called a Carol. It's not got the original, but it's as close as I could find. Original.
Cruets, or
Yeah,
they're cruets of
thank
some
you.
kind.
And it has a bell in it.
I remember seeing something like this used
years
in a
ago.
Jane Austen movie.
Yeah.
In a movie about Jane Austen where they had it on the table and it probably had vinegar and various,
Yeah.
you know,
Vinegar, salt,
spices and
pepper,
things
yeah.
to put on your food. And
I'm assuming this because this was in the attic of the aunt's house,
okay,
and I found the
the base.
base, yeah, okay, and the cruets were not around, so somebody took them, got rid of them, threw them away,
Or they
didn't
broke.
matter anything.
Yeah, they broke or got put aside and then not
But
included.
it was saved with there was a postage stamp. The grandfather was a postmaster. The postage stamp machine was there. The mailboxes, faces were there. So I'm assuming that this is all the early family. And then I read someplace that Nicholas Zimmerman, this guy, was a teacher in Perkinsville, and then he moved to the Farmers Hotel, it was called, in Wayland. It's not there anymore. Then several things and then dissolved. So he and his wife, Anna Hoffman, she came from Germany and were married, and they had 4 sons. One of them was this man up here. This man, which is Peter Zimmerman the First, and his wife, Amelia Conrad. He was a postmaster, and she actually had a millinery shop in the house. And we kind of figured out, the story of the house is kind of pretty. It was an old building. This was the original house, the Zimmerman house, and it was it was in the middle of what is now Fremont Street, but was moved to the area next to where it was, and then he turned it into a very beautiful Queen Anne's house. So it was absolutely gorgeous. Now does not belong to the Zimmermans, but had been in Zimmerman's ownership for over 100 years. Nicholas had a son, Peter the First. These are pictures of husband and wife. Peter the Second, that's my dad and my mother. Her maiden name was Flack. That family came from the Netherlands, through France, through Germany, and finally to the United States. So her history is kind of interesting. But this is Peter Henry II. Then I have that family's children, which is, this is Dorothy, who has 4 children. This is Peter, who was in World War II, injured, only lived to be 37. And this is Vic, who just recently passed away, but everybody knew Vic. And this was me. And this was back in 1946, maybe.
What's your full name, Aunt Morris? Do you have a middle name?
I have an interesting middle name.
Okay.
My mother's sister, Aunt Lou. We all know Aunt Lou in the family.
Yes.
Aunt Lou did not like the fact that my mother named me after the youngest of her sisters, Marjorie. And then she named me Anne, which wasn't in the family at all, so everybody was upset about that. And Aunt Lou said, well, you named for the youngest daughter in the family, Marjorie, you should put the name Louise in for the oldest member of the family. So she did. So I have two middle names, Marjorie Ann or Marjorie Louise. And I'm one and the same in the state.
I see. I thought my grandmother was the oldest of the. I thought who was do the four daughters or
Of my mother's family?
yeah.
My mother, okay. There was Aunt Lou, there was Aunt Frank, there was Aunt Harriet. I'm missing somebody.
There's more. There's like six.
Yeah,
Marjorie.
No, we meant Aunt Lou and Aunt Connie, Aunt Frank, Aunt Harriet, my mother, and Marjorie.
So there were six of them.
There were 6 girls.
So in that order, Aunt Lou was the
That's
oldest?
the order, yeah. I wrote a story, and believe it or not, somebody wanted to publish it. And I said no, because it's too many people are still alive that are in the story. I don't think that would be a good thing. When I'm dead, you can do that. But I wrote a story about what it was like to live in the Zimmerman house as a teenage girl who lost her mother and was forced to move in with a family. There were no choices. That was the way it was going to be. So I was taken away from my home in Albany with my dad and my brother Vic, and moved to Wayland. So I moved from the city of Albany to the little town country in Wayland. These are the girls, if you want.
The aunts?
These are mothers that you might be interested in. This is mother's family,
Okay.
my mother's family.
Yes, I am interested in that.
I'm not one who speaks much about the family except to family people, so a lot of things don't mean things to anybody except people who know of the Zimmerman family. To say what they were, when Nicholas came to this country and had 4 sons, 2 of the sons died, one as a young child and one as an older person, and then 2 were left. So the story is, this Peter Zimmerman I, my grandfather, had a brother still alive. Both died about the same time. Both are buried in the Wayland Cemetery, St. Joseph Cemetery, and both are near each other. And when Charles was the other boy, actually his name was Christian, but they called him Charles. Charles' tombstone, for some reason, fell over, and it was always in the ground. So I never saw it when I was in the cemetery. I saw this stone, and a cousin of mine had the stone revived and set up, and there was Charles Zimmerman, and the same dates as Peter. So I saw the aunts, and I said to the 5 maiden ladies that I lived with and a bachelor uncle, Uncle Vic, I said to the aunts, "Who's Charles? We don't talk about it." And they did not. So when Jake asked me, "Who is Charles?" I said, "They won't talk about it." So I started investigating. Not then, many years later, I started to investigate and found out that Charles was married to, what's her name, Loretta. And Loretta was Uncle Vic's girlfriend, and he stole her away from him. So the aunts were mad, and they, Charles and wife, moved to Buffalo and were never talked about again. How about that?
How about that?
So we found out who Charles was, and I've investigated his family. He's got lots of kids, and they're all in the Buffalo area, where Aunt Lou was, which is interesting.
Is that John from Buffalo and the cousin's mom knew?
There was Frankie, Marion, and John. John died. Marion, well, they're all gone. Yeah.
Whose children were they?
That was Uncle Mange, Emmanuel,
Right.
of the. My father's family consisted of 5 girls and 4 boys. One of the girls married twice. First husband died, Fred Riley. Second husband died, Charles Collimer, over the years. And that was the only woman that was married. Of the 4 men, Uncle Vic would have married Loretta, but his brother Emmanuel married Loretta. So Uncle Vic remained a bachelor the rest of his life and lived with the 5 ladies, or 4 sometimes, ladies in the house. Uncle Bill, whose name is Harold Jacob, where he got Bill, I have no idea. Uncle Bill was injured in World War I, he was gassed. So when I got to know him, he was not decrepit, but he had moments when he had difficulties. Then the second one was my dad, Peter II. Why am I drawing a blank? Uncle Vic. Oh, Uncle Vic was the first one. My dad, Bill, my dad. God.
Who was next? Mange or
That was
Madge?
Emmanuel.
Right.
There was Vic, Emmanuel, Bill and Pete. All right, so Uncle Vic remained a bachelor. Emmanuel married Uncle Vic's girlfriend and moved to Buffalo. That's where Charles went to. Then the third one, Vic, Mange, Bill. Vic, Mange, Uncle Bill, known as Harold Jacob, and my dad. My dad was the youngest boy.
And he was Peter Henry Zimmerman II.
Mm-hmm. The third is my brother Pete.
Yeah.
And the 4th is Peter.
Yep.
And the 5th is Peter.
Right.
Florida. The name has carried on until Peter V said, no more Peter Henrys. He said, that's enough. So his son is named Warren.
We're just here.
Uncle Vic was a bachelor all his life because of Uncle Mange stealing his girlfriend.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
You said Charles married his girlfriend. That's why they don't talk to him.
Oh, not Charles, Emmanuel, that died.
Uncle Mange?
Uncle Mange.
Married Loretta?
And Loretta, yeah. I misspoke, I still had Charles on mine.
Okay.
Charles had Margaret. They moved to Buffalo, yeah.
But he stole somebody's girlfriend, and that's why.
No, not Charles. Charles was,
Why was he ostracized?
I don't know. I never found out.
Okay.
We just didn't talk about it. No, that was the answer. Whenever I asked a question, we don't talk about it.
Okay.
If you investigate stories, sometimes it's kind of interesting, because if you don't talk about it, you are digging around and trying to find any information about it you can. And talking about the Flack family, they were all girls. One boy died, and the mother brought up basically the kids. Well, where was the father? Well, he died young. What happened? Well, we don't know.
Oh.
Okay. And I said, did he have some kind of a disease or something? Well, we really don't know, because that was the Flack family. That was your mother's family. Okay, so mother's family. I don't have any pictures of Grandfather Flack. I'm talking to Aunt Lou, and she said, well, there must be some around. No comment. I said, well, he died young. She said, yeah, he did. He was, he died. Was he sick? Oh yeah, he was very ill when he died. Okay, it's mysterious. To me, I want to know, I want to see a picture of him, I want to know. Aunt Marion said he was a very handsome, tall, slender, blondish hair, very nice looking, very mild-mannered man. And I thought, well, probably he was overworked and got sick. I found out he was an embezzler. And he had, unfortunately, and I was really going to dig into this one too, unfortunately, he had a judge in New Jersey, that's where they lived, and the judge was angling to get a higher position. I mean, this was known in the newspaper. He was wanting to get it into a higher position, so anybody who came before him was going to get maximum a sentence. And unfortunately, my grandfather, who embezzled the money, admitted he did it, was willing to, go to jail for it because he knew he was wrong. And because he really was, I guess, a very nice man. So they sentenced him to 5 years in Sing Sing. So he spent 5 years in Sing Sing in his, I'm going to assume 40 to 45-year-old, and came back and definitely was a sick man. Because Sing Sing was one of the most notorious prisons. I still remember the name of Sing Sing and people cringing. So he died, and she was left to bring up all those children, all girls.
What
That was my mother's family.
Okay, what was his name?
Henry Carl.
With a K or a C?
C. That was my brother was named Victor Carl.
Okay.
For Uncle Vic, and then for Carl, his other uncle.
And what was the mother's name?
Catherine.
Catherine with a K.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, you can go back to the Zimmerman stories.
Okay. So,
All of them if you want.
okay, 9 stories in a nutshell. Uncle Vic was a bachelor, lived in that house, was the most delightful man. But extremely religious, extremely, to the other end of being a Catholic person. He should have been a priest, and probably he would have been a priest and been happy. But he was a very thin man, and he loved to do hard physical work. He climbed in the cherry tree, and he was, taking care of it in the back because some of the limbs were rotten, and so he was up in the cherry tree, fell down, broke his leg, crawled to the house, which was a good distance away because the backyard was all farm park, and then there was the house, and he crawled to the house with a broken leg and got fixed. Aunt Nell was a nurse, so that helped. But his story was, when the horses and cars were there, he was an electric serviceman, so he would be traveling from one house to another. And in traveling to the houses, he would be with a horse and buggy, and the cars would drive by. And he finally said, I can take this horse and go down Dansville Hill faster than a car can. And then he said, no, I'll run faster than the car and beat the car. And he did. And that's a 5-mile run down the hill with the car. And he was running. That's the kind of man he was. He had a sense of humor for a child, which was really, really funny. He would sit at the table. We'd all have lunch together. And he'd sit at the table. This is my mother was still alive, so I was young. But he would sit next to me, and he'd always have a joke or something to tell me. And one day, the aunts had fixed something that had beans in it, and I didn't like beans. And it was set in front of me, and Uncle Vic said, beans, beans, the beautiful fruit. The more you eat, the better you feel, the better you feel. So you eat beans whatever you feel. How did it go? Beans means the beautiful fruit. They make your pants go tootity-toot. The more you eat, the better you feel. So eat beans at every meal. And that I was hysterical. Even to say the words that he said were really, really out of tune for children at that time. But I thought he was the funniest man, and he was a delight. I loved Uncle Vic. Then second in line was Aunt Mag. I disliked Aunt Mag. I disliked Aunt Mag because she was very authoritative. She was a heartbroken lady who, according to the stories, I can't verify this one, but there was a company in town called the Gunlock Factory. And the Gunlock Factory made school desks back then. Yeah, all good school desks were made in the Gunlock Factory. So Howard Gunlock was the original owner. Bill Gunlock and Mag, I have a picture of. I can't verify that that's him, but I was told that was him. That was her boyfriend. They broke up. He married somebody else. She never married. Aunt B, the sweetest of them, had a heart face. She was born on Valentine's Day. We used to kid her. But she was so sweet. Everybody that knew her really, really liked her for her just general being so nice. She worked in the silk mill. And then grandmother, her mother, got sick. And she was the one who was told, you will go home and take care of your mother. So she had to quit her job, quit her boyfriend, and go home. And she did. And that's where she was. She and Madge all their life. So I have the pictures of both of them when they were young and when they were old. Delightful lady.
The,
Talking about
the siblings
okay.
in their order of birth in that sense.
All right, so we
You're
got
right,
Uncle
Aunt
Vic,
B.
we got Aunt Mag, we got Aunt B,
Yeah.
and now we're Uncle Bill, World War. He was gassed in World War I and never recovered from it. As a result, in the book that I wrote, the first book that I wrote about living in there, I mentioned him as an alcoholic, and that was not true. But what I knew from the aunts, that Uncle Bill would go on a toot, and then Uncle Bill went on a toot, he was drunk, and Aunt Connie had to go to the different bars in Wayland and find out where he was and bring him home. She knew what was wrong, but I didn't know that. And so I assumed he was just an alcoholic, PSD from the war or whatever, and I never thought about it. But he was gassed, and at times he was brilliant with figures. He was unbelievable, even when he was drunk. They had an insurance company, and he was really, really top notch when it comes to working with numbers. But then I found out that he was so injured. I don't know what the gas did to them, but it was awful. And I had another uncle, Aunt Lou's husband, Uncle Bob, who also was gassed in World War I, and he spent his life in a nursing home because he could not care for his body, but his mind was still, he could play bridge and beat you all the time. He was unbelievable. I remember him. He was another delightful person who really lost out because of World War I. Anyway, okay, so that was Uncle Bill. They had 3 kids, and because Uncle Bill married Aunt Connie, my dad married Pauline Flack. So the Zimmerman married a Flack, the Zimmerman married a Flack. So we were double cousins. And they've never forgotten that. So that was Connie, Jane, Kay, and Jake, whose name really was Harold. Okay, that was Uncle Bill.
Uncle Bill.
Then next came my dad, who was the kindest, nicest person in the world. I don't know what to say about him. He was a meat salesman. He worked in the kind of Chicago barnyards and told horrible stories about what was going on with animals, and And but he stayed in the field. That was his job. And finally worked into being a salesman. He had a gift of gab that you would have loved. And after he had been in that service, then he moved over to being a person who opens territories for a product for Oscar Mayer Company. So he did that. And as a result, we moved from Elmira, where my sister and brother Dot and Pete were born. We moved to Corning, where Vic and I were born. And then we moved to Oswego. And I still remember a squeaky little bike that I had going up and down the street. I was about 3 years old. Then we moved to Albany, where we stayed until my mother died. And then for about 10 years. So we moved around. I was in a lot of different schools and so on. And so were my brother and sister. My sister was going into high school when we moved to Oswego. And she became the most popular person in school. Everybody loved Dot. Everybody did. So she had the football team on our front steps almost every time they were finished practicing and so on, came over to see the new girl Dot. And she was really well liked. She always was.
Can I tell a funny story?
What?
Mom said that during that time, she got in a lot of trouble with all the other girls in high school because at one time all the football players put their name as Zimmerman on the back of their jerseys.
Oh, I didn't know that. I knew she was popular with them because they'd be out, the whole team's out in the front porch, and I had to walk through them.
She was very beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, she was gorgeous.
And she was very sweet.
And she was very sweet.
But I just thought that was a riot.
I know there was one, what the heck was his name? Don, I don't remember his last name. And he had Blub, I think he was called.
He was called Blub.
Blub, yeah.
He wanted to
You
marry
met
her.
him?
No,
Of
course not.
He was a sweetheart. The guys would come to Albany, and Dot would be in bed because she was a late sleeper, and we shared the room. So I'd be up and out and so on, and she'd be in bed, and the guys would come to Albany, and I would say, "She's still asleep, but you can go in and wake her up," you know. Dorothy was furious. Oh my God. I still remember when she came out and, "What did you do that for?"
Yeah. Right, little sister.
Yeah, but she was funny. Blub really liked, Don Pauly was his name. He really liked that. I mean, he was enamored. It was cute. Dad married Mother. She was a Flack. And when the Flack family women all got together, they were a unique bunch of ladies. And Dad got along with every single one of them, even Aunt Lou. Aunt Lou was a dynamite. Very opinionated person. Usually right. I don't know what to say. We had a happy home.
Grandpa had a little mustache when I knew
You
him.
what?
Grandpa had a little mustache when I knew him.
Oh yeah, yeah. That didn't.
And a
last too long.
twinkle in his eye.
Yeah. Oh, he had the most beautiful blue eyes. Don't ever do anything bad. When he finds out about it, those eyes snap. I did one thing bad in my life. I stole a box of crayons. I was probably 6 in the store, and I knew I was stealing them because we didn't have the money to buy a box of crayons. And so I took the crayons and put them in my pocket and went home. And Dad said, "Where did you get those?" "Oh, I found them in the store," which is true. I found them in the store. "Did you pay for them?" "Well, I didn't have to." You don't have to when you're stealing. And he said, "Well, I know the store owner, so we're going to go back and I'm going to have you take them back. No. So my discipline was, we walked, it was only half a block, walked to the store, and I had to give them to Mrs., I've forgotten her name, but she was a little Jewish lady, and she said, "Oh, that's all right, Marjorie." And my father said, "No, that wasn't all right." So we left and went home. I did it again. I really wanted those crayons. And, you know, in the stores in those days, there was one they'd be talking over there, so you'd slide something in your pocket and you'd go. And so Dad said, "That's the last time you are ever going to do that." He didn't spank me, but he looked at me with those eyes, and I knew I won't do it again. I really promise I won't do it again, and I never did. And I brought David up with that, and I made him take the little thing, what was it, the chapstick, back to the drugstore and give it back. And, you know, he's the most honest person in the world, honest to God. I think if you do that with kids. And anyway, I remember that vividly with those eyes. I also remember that because I was the youngest in the family, I was not in on all of the family, because everybody's older than me. Dot was 14 years older than I was. She helped bring me up. In fact, all my life she helped bring me up. Pete was 11 years older than I am, and Vic was 7 years older than I am. And Vic would constantly pick on me. Constantly. He would turn the lights off in the living room knowing that I was afraid of the dark. And I'd scream, "Mommy!" And Mother would come in. "I can't keep you. You two cannot stay in the same room together. He keeps turning the light off." Typical kid, but that was Vic. And all his life, that was Vic.
Yeah, Mom said he pestered Uncle Pete like mercilessly. He just drove him crazy.
Yeah. So, okay, Dad. Then next comes the girls. I feel like I missed somebody. I don't think so. The three girls, the younger ones, there was the older family, which is Uncle Bill and up to Uncle Vic. The younger family was my dad down to Aunt Nell. Before the three girls and him were the young family. And then there was the older family. And then that's the way they talk to each other, you know. Well, he's in the younger family. So, and the younger family had a lot more leverage than the older family. Because Aunt Mag was in the older family. So Aunt Billy was next. Aunt Billy was the most charming woman ever. She was just an absolutely beautiful young person. She grew up as her father's favorite child, and they all said that. Billy could get away with anything, and she could. So the story with Billy was that she came downstairs as probably a 10-year-old, and she had her beautiful dress on, and that's the way she was going to leave the house, in that beautiful dress. And her mother said, "You can't do that. You're going to get it dirty. That's your best dress. That's Sunday. You don't wear that today." And she said, "But I want to." And Mother said, "And I don't want you to. Go put it back." She didn't. She stood there and said, "No, I'll wait till Dad comes home." And Father walked in the door, and Mother said, "Tell her to change that dress. She's not going outside in that." And he said, "It's so beautiful on you, Willeen." He called her Willeen. That's right. "It's so beautiful on you, Willeen. You can leave it on." Wow. Authority forever. And she was. She got away with everything. Then Marion, the next one, and Nell, the next one, they couldn't get away with anything. But boy, Bill, she could. But she was so charming, and she was so likable. And she met Fred Riley, who lived in Hornell. Hornell was a town close by, and he came from a very wealthy family, the Rileys in Hornell, North Hornell. And so 17 years later, he said to her, "You're either going to marry me or you're not, but you're going to make up your mind now or I'm gone." So Billy married him. She got married at 35. And he lived for 4 years and died from the appendix when it burst, and they couldn't do anything about it back in those days. And I vaguely remember him as a sweet Irish man. He was just, but I was like 2 or 3, so I just vaguely remember him. And so he died, and so Aunt Billy came back to the house, back home with the rest of the ladies. And several years later, actually it was in 1959, she had opened a store downtown called the Billy Shop. And Billy Shop sold women's lingerie and baby clothes. And I was old enough so that I could help out in the store. And so I waited on people in the store and helped Aunt Billy. And she was just a charming person. Her store was going really well. And she met Charles Colomer. Charlie was one of my favorite people. Charles was loved to sing, loved to be boisterous. He was a construction engineer in Rochester, and he had built his own home in Springwater, which is a town next to Wayland, and it's up on a hill with a spring running through it. It's a stone fireplace, the wood that's in there. He built the whole thing. It was gorgeous. His wife died. He met Aunt Billy. Billy, charming. They decided to get married, but she had to give up the store. And she said that was her one regret that she didn't do. She gave up the store.
It's a good story. It led to repeat customers. You sell the lingerie, then a little later you sell the baby clothes.
Yeah. Good thinking. I'm not sure that was in their mind, but anyway. So she married Charlie and lived 4 very, very happy years. But Charlie was addicted to French vanilla ice cream. He was a stocky man. And he had his dish of ice cream. I mean, it was a dish of ice cream every single night. And you had to eat ice cream with him. That really terrible thing to do. But I like to put stuff on it. He'd not just the plain French vanilla. He had a tub of it this big in his freezer. So 4 years later, he died of a heart attack, which was really sad, really, really sad. So Billy went back to the house with all of the things that she brought from Charlie's house, from all the things she brought from Fred's house, all came back to the Zimmerman house. So now the Zimmerman house is loaded with furniture and remained loaded with furniture for the rest of the time everybody was there, because nobody wanted to get rid of things. You'd find some place to store it. So in the barn in the back of the house, the upstairs was loaded with. Then my dad brought his furniture down after Mother died, and I was there, and he moved. Vic was in college. He came down and put all his stuff up there, so that barn was loaded with stuff. I'm not kidding. And so anyway, Billy's got all her stuff. This table is from Billy's house, and it's 1935. It's beautiful. But to finish Billy,
Yes.
Billy lived to be 102. She was amazing. When she was 95, she could still add columns of figures in her mind. She was an amazing lady, but she got very crotchety and very bitter, and that's the way I remember her in the end. And it was not her. But anyway, Aunt Mary was a teacher. She got her degree, whatever it was called back then, when she was 20 years old. When she was 68 years old, she retired. She taught all those years, first grade. 1 year she taught second grade, hated it, went back to first grade. She was another person who everybody loved. She had a very, very sad story, and she told me while sitting on the cedar chest, which is something that was traditional in the Zimmerman ladies' house, they all had their little cedar chests, their wishful chests, and they'd have their things that they made or bought or whatever for when they get married. They put it in there, plus a little bottle of Shanley's or whatever the whiskey is of the day, Four Roses. They all had their bottles. You were invited to sit on the cedar chest and sip with them.
That's a great story.
But you didn't tell anybody. But everybody did. It was just when Don loves that story when he was with Aunt Marion, and he was invited to share the bottle. No glasses, just share the bottle because nothing will happen. It's alcohol. It's okay to do that. And so he would sip the Four Roses, I think it was, back and forth. But here these pristine ladies who, if you picked up something from the floor, you had to go wash your hands, would sip from the bottle with their whoever. So Aunt Marion taught, but she also had her bottle. And she was the pink lady. They all had their colors. Aunt Marion's room was pink. Her bedspread was pink. Her chair had a pink cushion. Her rings were pink. They were caught up with their color. Aunt Billy was kind of between green and blue. Didn't really matter. Aunt Nell was lavender. Everything had to be lavender. The room was lavender. I slept we had twin beds in that room. And that was my room too. And Aunt Nell sometimes would take a job in Hornell at the nursing home until she'd be gone for several months. And then the room was mine. But Aunt Marion, another person who people have good memories of because they had her for first grade. And partway through her teaching, after maybe about 15 or 20 years, the principal said, you have the traditional 2-year degree for teaching, whatever it was called. And he said, I'd like to see you get your bachelor's. So at 40 or 45, whatever it was, she went back to college and got her bachelor degree. She was so proud. I was proud for her.
Yeah.
You don't do that like that. But she was so proud. She was the only one who had a bachelor's degree in the family. Maybe Uncle Mange did. And then there's one more aunt. There's Aunt Nell, which is my godmother, but she really isn't my godmother, but I told her she was my godmother, so we played the game. And Aunt Nell was I didn't tell you Marion's story, was disappointed like Aunt Marion was. The boyfriend that she was going to marry went away to Notre Dame, met somebody else, married the person, and then came back home to a broken-hearted lady. And she was. Then Aunt Nell was the same thing. She was actually engaged. I had her engagement ring. She was actually engaged to John Howe, who was my godfather, my real godfather, from Corning. And they were going to be married, and somehow this other lady was pregnant with his child, so that ended
Somehow.
that. Yeah. And that crushed Nell. It really did. She was kind of bitter all her life. and hard to live with. So the rest of them were bad. Meg was kind of icky. So that was the ladies there. They all had their lives just like everybody else does, and they all had their trials and tribulations, but they all stuck together for their life. And now they're all gone.
But that they all lived in that house.
You what?
They all lived in that house.
All lived in that house. That house was over 100 years old, probably at least 120, counting the old original house. It had two on that house. The house is pretty. Not anymore.
And all the kids. Billy's dog.
That was my boyfriend. And this was the Lassie, and Lassie,
This is
he was the
beautiful.
newspaper guy, and we were 13, whatever it was.
Still.
And he used to throw the newspaper, and Minnie would always catch it. And then one day she didn't want to catch it because somebody's standing there with with the camera, scared the heck out of her. So she just stood there, and then Pete just handed it to her, and she took it.
Cute.
But that was so cute.
It
That was
is
a
cute.
calendar cover that they used.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
It looks like a beautiful picture used for something in Norman Rockwell's day.
Yeah.
Shotzi, whose dog was that?
That was a picture with Frank, I remember. Frank had a bubbling personality like Vic and the rest of those guys. And he would burst into a room and he would be the center of attention.
Okay.
He worked for, he made a lot of money for
Who
the
is
oil
that?
company. This is my
Vic?
cousin Frank. No,
Marge?
I'm talking
Who
about...
is this, Vic?
I'm talking about Frankie. He would burst in the room, and he would always have a bottle of bourbon, and he'd say, "Can I get a shot?" Well, we're all sitting around in the kitchen. "Can I get anybody a shot of this?" And Aunt Mag would say, "Well, I'll take just a little." And Aunt B, "Well, I'll take a little. It's my stomach, you know." She always had stomach problems, which she really did. And then the rest of them said, "No, yeah, I'll take it." And he'd pass the bottle around, and it was just a fun time when Frankie came. It was fun, and the whole crew was with him or not. Yeah, sometimes his wife came. She was a delight. She had an Irish temper. I can't think of any other stories to tell.
What about yourself? About how you came into teaching music and like the
I'll
journey?
tell you how I came into teaching music. I was in Wayland, and as a kid who was very upset still after several years of having to live with 5 old maid aunts and a bachelor uncle in the little town of Wayland, even though I liked Wayland. I had good friends and all the rest of this stuff. And how do I say this?
Well, you went to the same college Mom went to.
Well, my dad, I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school. I was one of those kids who I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Just get out. My whole dream in moving into that place was moving out of it. And I waited until I was 18, and I thought, I don't have to listen to you anymore because I'm 18 and I can make up my own mind. Because they had throttles on me. There were things you couldn't do. I did them anyway. But anyway, so my whole goal in life was to move out of that house. So when it was June, I moved out of the house and I went over to live with Dad in Rushville. And I was totally happy in that little country school house. And I don't know that he was totally happy to have me there, but because it kind of crushed what he did. But we got along very nicely. But I was only there for a summer, and then I was off to college. What college are you going to? I don't know. Well, what do you want to be? What's your interest in life? And I said, I don't know. He said, and this is what happened. He said, well, you like music. Well, of course I like music. I love music. And he said, why don't you do what your sister did? Why don't you go to Potsdam and get a degree in teaching music. I thought, yeah, okay. That was my attitude. Yeah, okay. And I just did it. So I had to prepare because I had to audition, and I didn't mind that because I love playing piano. And I did the audition with the two pieces, and I was accepted, and I started college. I wasn't enthusiastic about it. I loved doing the music. I got kind of belligerent in some things when somebody said, well, you know, don't you want to run for office or something? Why do I want to run for office? I don't want to be a secretary or something. And I didn't. And then in my senior year, I was assigned a project to do by Helen Hosmer, who was the head of the music department. And so she gave me an assignment of things to do as a secretary and attendance and so on. And so I was busy monitoring 300 people, which that made me happy. And I thought I really liked doing that. And so I graduated from college. And in the meantime, I had met Don and a few other people. Was engaged to one. Anyway, came back to, went down, Dorothy said, why don't you come down and apply for the job in Comac, because I'm pregnant and going to leave that position, and I'm sure they would take you in.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to go to Long Island because all my friends were going to Long Island, so I wanted to go to Long Island, so I went to Long Island and applied for the job and of course got the job. And I was happy in it. But I stayed at Dot and Tony's, and they had Paula. And were you expecting when
I was born in 61.
Yeah, after
Yeah,
we,
you were.
yeah,
Yeah, okay. So
because she was a baby when we were down there, because I would, remember?
this is when I was still single, because I lived in Huntington Beach. Because Dad said, are you looking for a place still? And I said, well, yeah, I am. And she said, I found somebody who would love to room with you. And she said it was the art teacher, and she was looking for a place. She said, you know, there's lots of places. At that time there were. And so we found a place at Huntington Beach at Renton. And so, what's her name? So she and I moved in together, and then a third girl came in, and we rented a house on Huntington Beach, and I stayed there. The school had a superintendent, as most schools have. Superintendents are there for a reason, to move up to the next position, the next better paying position, and I think that's all they're there for. But anyway, the superintendent was so bad. The guy that had been there when Dot was there was really a nice guy. Really liked his job, but moved on. And so we had this idiot, and the department got together, the arts department got together, and we said, this is what was asked of us. They said, can you, because jobs were available anyplace, can you people all resign? And that man will be gone. Tom Shaheen, that was his name, just remembered it. And I said, sure. I'm going to go to Eastman School of Music in the summer. I'd be there in the winter. I could stay at Dad's house in Rushville, no problem. And Don was there. And I thought, I could. And Joan, I remember, said, the art person said, yeah, I could. And so a group of us, there were about 5 or 6 of us, who said, yeah, you know, we don't have family here, we're not, you know, we don't have to be here. But then there were a group who said, yeah, we can't move. But there was enough of the other group, about 6 of us, who resigned.
Mm-hmm.
Now my problem was, I'd only been there 2 years. That's not a good resume. And so I made sure that I had the contract for the 3rd year before I resigned. Then I resigned. And then I went up to Wayland. Well, Dad was living in Canada, Rushville actually. And I started looking for jobs in Rushville. And one of my cohorts from Potsdam was teaching in Canandaigua, and she said, well, we don't have any openings, but I'll let you know as soon as we do. Canandaigua's a good school. But I said, in the meantime, we've got to find a job. So I went over to Avoca. And the odd part of it is, I was in Comac. Herm had just moved up to, New York. I had his principal's office, was my office. Now, where does he move to? Where does his family move to? Up in Avoca. I moved to Avoca. Just all these coincidences. It was just really strange. It's like, I'm following Herm wherever he goes that I would be at. So I took the job in Avoca, and it was interesting. It's a little school. You taught kindergarten through 12th, all those grades.
Wow.
But the other music teacher said, you don't want to teach this middle school, this 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. I'll take that part off your job, and you can do kindergarten through 6th grade and the high school. And he didn't want anything to do with the high school. So I thought, it's okay, that's a good job. I can work with the little kids, and I certainly can work with the big kids. So that's what we decided to do as a department, to the two of us in the department, and went to the principal, and they said, if that's the way you want to work it, it's fine with them. The middle school kids were upset.
Oh.
I'm not having this cute teacher coming in, this young person, we're going to have this old fart person. It was really funny. But there was part of the job that I was really upset with, and it kind of turned me sour to this little community. That it's a potato country. In potato country, they have immigrants who are migrants who come in and they do the potatoes, and then they move to tomatoes or wherever else they go. So I was to teach the black kids. I went, what do you mean teach the black kids? If they're in 4th grade, they go to the 4th grade. No. The black children are the kids are only here for a couple of months, so you only have them for a few months, basically 4 months, and you'll teach on the stage. Okay, that's part of the job, but I didn't understand why. So I walked out on the stage, the curtain was closed, and that's my classroom for these kids. And I thought, wait a minute, I don't like this. It really soured me. But I had to teach them. Now I'm sitting, what do I teach them? They have no material. They have no desks to work with. We sat on the floor. And I'm going, what do I do with these kids? So you talk with them, where you're from, all the rest of the stuff to begin with. And I saw one kid doing, and I thought, okay, we can do that. So, I started teaching them things that they already knew that they were teaching me. And we had a great time. We really did. When it was time for the kids to go, one teacher said to me, you'll be glad to get out of that smelly room. I said, what are you talking about? There's nothing wrong with that room. It's fine. It's a stage. And she said, oh, those kids stink. I just wanted to punch her. I just wanted to say, I just left a batch of beautiful kids who were having a good time, and I was thoroughly enjoying being with them. And you say that? I didn't say it. I mean, we're talking about a little community.
Yeah.
But I went chalk too. I can't do this. And so I'm talking to the kids, and I said, well, what grade are you going to go to when you go back to, because they were going back to Florida.
what grade are you gonna go into? Oh, we don't go to school. I said, you have to go to school. I know you don't like school, but you have to go to school. No, we don't have any birth certificates. What? They're born at home. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Here are these kids. And that's when I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. It just makes me sick to even think about it. So what did he do? He drives over in his little convertible, and here he is in the parking lot, and he asked to come in, or if Miss Zimmerman could come out. And so I went out to the car. You're not supposed to leave the building. I mean, oh my God. So I went out to the car, and he had my engagement ring. So we got engaged in the parking lot of Avoca Schools.
Because Uncle Don couldn't wait.
And then I walked back into the school, and here these kids come out. Hey, Miss Zimmerman, we saw you get engaged. It was hysterical. So there we were. So I put in my resignation, but they didn't know why,
Yeah.
and they never will.
No, but that.
But I met two of the senior students that I had that I really liked. They were both good musicians, and we were working together. We put on a concert outside, which they never had done. So we put a concert on outside, and Elaine was the pianist, and Peter was the singer. And it was just really, really nice. But I met them at Potsdam at one of the reunions. And all of a sudden I heard this, Miss Zimmerman, Mrs. Fahrenholz, Miss Zimmerman. I'm like, wait, who are you? Here they came running over. So that was fun. It was fun to connect with them. But I couldn't even tell them, why did you leave us, you know?
Yeah.
And I said, well, you only had one more year anyway. You were going to go to music school, so, I'm not worried about you. But that was really something that I can't deal with. I just couldn't.
No.
So I go to college. One of my roommates, Doris, was black, and one of my best friends, was black, bi-female. What a voice! She married another music teacher, and they were in Connecticut. And did a very, very fine job. Schools loved them. Pete and Vi, they were great. But I thought, and I told you the story about Bythema and I in New York.
About what?
Bythema when
No.
she was in New York, and we both taught on Long Island. I forgot what school I taught in. But she called me up one day and said, hey, let's go shopping in New York. For the heck of it, let's go to Saks or whatever. And I said, well, I can't afford to buy anything. She said, I need a pocketbook. So we met in New York and we went shopping. So we walked into Saks, and the two of us were standing at the counter, and the woman came over and she said to me, what can I do for you? And I said, I'm not buying anything, I'm just looking, but she needs a pocketbook. And she walked away.
Oh, God.
I said goodbye. I'm calling the manager. She said, no, you're not. We're getting out of here. She said, I'm not going to create anything. They don't want me, but I won't.
This is what we do when we get old.
What?
Talk.
Well, they know the history, and some of the history is kind of...
History.
You chatted quite a while. I must have been 16. I got to go to a movie. Dot wanted to do something, and I didn't want to. And if I got stubborn, better give in or else. And she said, well, there's a movie playing that you might be interested in, and I would let you go by yourself if you promise. You'll go to the movie, and when the movie is done, I will be right outside. So it was I've got the copy of it, finally got the copy of it. It's something about the red shoes. It's something, I've got it upstairs. I've never looked at it, but I was allowed to go. It's a dancing thing. So I was allowed to go by myself. It was the first time in my life I had ever been alone without a chaperone. And it was an eerie feeling for me, because even in the aunt's house, the whole time I lived there, I was alone for 1 minute when Aunt Bee went out to hang up the clothes, and Uncle Vic went downtown to pick up a bottle of booze for somebody, and I was in the house alone. So what did I do? I played the piano. It was really crazy. That house was always busy, and I was always busy.
A lot of people there.
And my other family back in Albany, we did have alone times, but here we didn't. So I was sitting in this theater going, it's kind of strange, but I kind of liked it, and I thought, I can relax and I can watch a movie I want to see. And sure enough, when I walked outside, there she was. So, yeah, my first experience being alone by myself was with her, right outdoors.
That's neat though.
Dot and I were in trips to Savannah, Georgia, to see Aunt Marge and Uncle Dutch and Billy. Aunt Marge took Dot and I to her Bluffton house. You were there, okay? And Bill was there, and that's the only contact that Billy and I had. And it was at Easter time, so there was Easter baskets for us. And Bill was younger than I was, and so we stayed in Bluffton. And I remember Dot and I slept in the same room. And when the sun went down, it was pitch black. There's my hand. You could not see a thing. And I said to Dot, it's dark. She said, don't worry. It's, the lights will come on in the morning or whatever she said, passed it off because she knew I was scared.
Yeah.
I wasn't scared at all. I loved it. I love to be in the total dark. I don't like to stay in it, but I want to I can get out of it. But I love to be in the dark because of that. It was so, I can't describe it. There was a little brook that went by, you could hear that, and there was no other sound. And then when the birds started to sing, you wake up. It was just an unusual feeling. And of course, Dot slept through it. She liked to sleep. And I would get up. That's when I went outside and I saw this thing go down the wet. I thought it was, I guess it was a snake. But,
In the river, right?
In the river, yeah.
In the river.
But that was interesting.
Yeah.
So that was one. One we went down, Margaret and Pete had moved to Decatur, Georgia. And we were going to go down to visit Margaret and Peter and the baby Pete. And so I was probably 14, maybe. I remember I had Peter in my arms. There's a picture of it someplace. But we went down, and we were right out of the snow country. I mean, we were bitter cold and so on, and Georgia was hot. And so we went out on the deck, and we had the chairs and the towels, and got sunburned badly. We went up to the Thousand Islands, and I always remember that with fond memory, but I don't remember what I remember. But I remember the castle, and she was always interested in showing me this thing was this and this thing was that, and all that. She was kind of teaching me along the way because she knew I never would get a chance to do this.
She also liked to share things like that, like tell you things. She would tell us stuff about chorus, and we were like, okay, Mom, great, thanks. But yeah.
But the memories, you remember those things.
Definitely, always.
And she was close to my mother, your grandmother, which I never had a closeness because I didn't have a chance to have
You were a
closeness.
child.
She worked all the time.
Yeah,
Anyway.
when she worked.
Yeah. She was always in a suit. That's the way I remember her.
What about continuing on your own timeline? I think we left it where you'd had your job, and you had a job where they wanted to leave because of the racism.
Yeah.
But then you got married. Where were you married?
We were married in Stanley,
Stanley.
which is, I wanted to be married in the Rushville Church, but I got a kick out of, what was the name of the priest that married us?
Oh, God.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I can't
I
remember.
can see him. He died in an automobile accident shortly after we were married.
I just have
But he was
some
wonderful.
Advil and
And then he was able to work with a Lutheran and a Catholic. And because one of his best friends was Lutheran. So he got us together as, whatever religion you were, it was fine. It didn't matter to him. But I wanted to be married in the church in Rushville. And he said, no, you don't. He said, you're going to walk down the aisle, then you're going to walk around a potbelly stove to get up to the altar. He said, you don't want to be married in that church. He was pastor in both. So he said, Stanley is much nicer. It's a prettier church. It's more suited to a wedding. So we agreed to it because it's just one town over. And so we went to that, and they were painting the kitchen of the church. I thought, well, we could have had a potbelly stove, or we've got painters, but the painters didn't bother it. And I had a very small wedding planned. I said, my wedding will be, I wore my sister's wedding dress, I wore Dot's wedding dress, that was tailored to her by her mother-in-law, and tailored for me by my mother-in-law, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And Paula has the dress, but I don't think it's been used, maybe sometime. But anyway, I wanted a very small wedding because my brother Pete could not be there. But he could be if we were married in St. Joseph's Church in Wayland, because he lived right next door to it. But we couldn't do that because then Don's parents, or grandparents, wouldn't come at all.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to be in a Catholic church.
Hmm.
So this Lutheran Catholic thing was a problem. And I thought, I just want our family there. That's it. I'll have Dot as a maid of honor. Don had his brother-in-law, Janie's husband, Gene. And I had Peter Jr., who was about 12 years old at the time, as a junior usher. So he would usher the people in. There weren't that many people. Some people came because you can come to a wedding, even if you're not invited. You can't go to the reception, but you can go to the wedding. So there were people that came anyway, like friends of ours, Nita and John. And I'm delighted to tell this story. Nita Baird and John Forsyth, we stood up for them when they were married. He's a shop teacher, she was a nurse. She was much older than John, but that's fine. Okay, so we stood up for them. Nita loved to take pictures. So she had a camera back then. This is 1962, vintage camera. And she's gonna, she said she was gonna do our wedding, try to get our wedding, and then she was going to bring it over to the reception where she was invited, and then she was going to take the rest of the pictures there. Okay, so we said fine. I really didn't care. I didn't have a photographer. I did have flowers. I did have a wedding gown. And he did have a tuxedo type thing and so on. And the aunts said when we were planning the wedding, or talking about the wedding, where are you going to have the reception? I said, well, I was just planning to come back to the house, the family. And Billy said, no, you have to have a reception. And I said, quote, exactly these words, okay, you do it. They did. They planned the reception. They had everything in the St. Joseph's Church school. They had the big room downstairs, so we had the wedding reception there, and Pete could be there because it was right across the street from him. They could wheel the wheelchair across, and it worked out perfectly. It really did. And even though the grandmother did not want to come to the wedding, the Lutheran grandmother did not want to walk in St. Joseph's. I have a picture of her. Here's Dot, here's Herm, Grandma in between,
walking down the aisle, grim face all the way down. But it was, but Nita took pictures in this film, okay? So she had the reception, or not the reception, she had the wedding, and she had the grandparents coming down, and then she came into the reception room, okay? The camera's got the ceiling, it's got the pipes going down, it's got the floor, and then it's got pictures, Then somehow the ceiling got it. Okay, it is hysterical. When we watched it, I still laugh when I see it. We watched it, and it was on what film it was at the time. So I took it down to the copy shop a couple of years ago, and I said, "Can you do anything with this?" Because I said it's the only pictures I really have of our wedding, a film of our wedding, and. Pam said, "Sure, we can do anything. We'll figure it out." Then I get this telephone call. Pam said, "You want the whole thing?" And I said, "Absolutely." She said, "Well, now wait a minute. The whole thing is the ceiling and the pipes." She said, "I can cut those out for you." No. I said, "I want the whole thing just as it is." She was in hysterics doing it. Pam had a sense of humor. I'm sorry her copy shop is done because she just got too old to do it, but it's priceless. It's just priceless. I've got it on a CD, so.
So was it taken that way on purpose, or was it?
No, that was Nita.
That was her,
Nita.
yeah.
She was a nurse, so she just kind of flew by the side of whatever had to happen, happened. Okay, so yeah, well, I'll put it on my shoulder. My shoulder's tired. You'd have to meet Nita. Nita talked like this. "Well, I could probably do that.
Nita
It might
was-
take me a
yeah.
little while." That was how she talked. She had 2 huge Great Dane dogs in an apartment. Huge. What happened to them?
Nita was a mental case. I mean, she
Nita
was,
was most unusual.
she had such fears, terrible fears. So John said, "Did they go someplace? Sometimes she'd get down the floor of the car."
Oh, she hated bridges.
She was,
Kind of like Kathy did.
yeah,
She's over that.
yeah, she was interesting.
Yeah, she was fun, but she was not in good health as a nurse, and so one day John was sitting in the living room and heard the crash in the kitchen, and that was it.
What was the name of the church where Mom and Dad were married? And what town were we in?
St. Mary's in Canandaigua,
Canandaigua.
and there was a hotel right down the road from that.
Yeah.
It burned.
Oh.
Yeah, that was too bad. It was beautiful.
We drove past it, and she would say, "That's the church where we were married." Like, she wouldn't even stop, have Dad stop the car. It was almost like she couldn't take time out for herself. "Oh, that's the church." And we're like, "Wait a second, let's see the church." "Okay, we're going to see Grandpa. Guess we're not seeing that church."
Yeah, we go by every time we go over to Canandaigua, the church. And down the road from there was a small apartment building, and that's where Dad and Edie lived when Dad died. And Edie called us up, and Canandaigua was, 45 minutes away, so Don said, "I'll go over and get you," because she was scared to be alone. So, did I go with you?
What?
When we went over to get Edie, bring her back,
No,
you went by yourself.
yeah.
Yeah, because Don said he got to the door and it was pitch black inside, and he knocked at the door, and she was sitting behind a chair.
They piled, they had all these fears, and they started piling furniture in front of the doors and stuff. It was
It
really.
was her or Grandpa too?
Actually,
Mostly
it
her.
was probably, he went along with anything that she
Yes,
said.
yes,
If she wanted to sit behind a chair,
yes.
then that's perfectly all right.
Yeah.
But he was so sick at that time.
Yeah, what happened with him?
He had a stomach ulcer
Okay.
that exploded.
Oh God.
Yeah.
And
It was
was
awful.
it June of '83? Because that's when I was finishing college.
He died in May.
Okay, so it was May.
Yeah. I
Okay.
don't know.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to be around anybody.
Oh, okay.
And Vic and Todd are upstairs, and Vic found something, I don't know, a record or something, and all of a sudden the two of them were dancing, and that's when I walked out of the room. I thought, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they obviously were feeling the same way I was feeling, but they just exposed it differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I think that Mom was at a women's club conference,
she was.
and she was away, and Dad didn't call her to tell her he went and got her.
Oh,
I think that's how that played out. But I know he went and got her. Paula told me. And
yeah, he would do that.
you want to talk about Edie for a second? Because I remember a story Anthony told us, which was actually really funny. So they're at the funeral, Grandpa's funeral, and Edie, and the things we didn't know about Edie was she didn't like girls,
Yeah.
and she didn't like women who were competition with her for
Right.
men. And I remember her being here. I don't remember what the circumstances were, but she was here, I believe, because maybe sitting in one of those taller chairs, and would completely ignore us, but would talk to the boys. And Anthony talked to her son from, I guess, her first marriage. I think it was her son, and he told Anthony, and that's how we knew about this. That oh yeah, she doesn't like girls. She won't talk to girls. It's competition for men. And she was actually kind of girlish, giggling, talking to the boys, and I was thinking,
She was. Yeah.
I was like, who is this woman?
Oh, she was. Yeah.
But we just called her Grandmother Edie. We knew she moved around a lot because she didn't get along with any neighbors. She was just
She didn't like
ostracized.
any place.
Yeah, she didn't like
First,
anyone or anything.
Yeah.
But Grandpa was really sweet.
Yeah.
And
He put up with her because I remember Dot and I walking, and he worked part-time when he was retired.
Mhm.
He worked part-time in the Star store, grocery store, helping people carry groceries out and put it in the car and so on. And we walked up to him and got on his side and said, "You don't have to stay with her, you know." And he said, "I know. I made a commitment." I was dead. I thought, but you don't have to do it.
yeah,
You just don't have to. She was miserable.
she was awful.
She was-
I remember she was
And
awful.
she never referred to him as Pete or my husband. That man.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But even at the aunt's house, oh, they hated her.
bet they
But they
hated
would have
her.
hated anybody, even if she'd been wonderful.
The most important part of my life I would like to mention is my husband of 62 years. I can't believe it. It seems like it was just yesterday. But then I look at my boys who are now in their 50s, married. David, the older one, has an absolutely beautiful wife and an absolutely gorgeous child, Kathy and Angelica, and they are the star in his eyes all the time, and ours too. Delightful family. They live in Connecticut. And my younger son, Philip, everybody knows Philip. He's quite a character, and he is married to an absolutely gorgeous, beautiful, wonderful Danielle. So I am very, very lucky. I have two daughters-in-laws that I absolutely love, and I'm really proud of both of them. And Philip has 3 kids. He has Ashley, who's now graduated from high school, and I can't believe that either. Connor, who will be in junior year next year and on his way out. And then Justin, who just turned 7, and he is an absolute charming kid. He's just fun. The older children have taken up music, which makes me really, really happy. Ashley is playing flute. Connor is playing drums. He is an outstanding drummer, and she has an alto flute, which was the one thing she wanted for graduation this year. And I am so proud of my family, and I really would like people who meet them understand how wonderful they are, and I'm so glad. And I'm getting teary-eyed, and I don't want to do that because I am proud of them, really, really proud of them, both of them. That was the one thing that I would really like to mention.
Okay.
Okay.